Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dojo Live. I'm Tulio Siragusa, broadcasting from Southern California. Today is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Welcome to the show. I'm joined by Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and Kim Lantis
Pleasure
in
to be here.
Tennessee, Mexico. Hi, guys.
Hello.
And our guest, Sanders Partee, who is broadcasting from Alexandria, Virginia, beautiful right off the river, Alexandria, Virginia. Thank you for joining us today.
So happy to be here.
Let's have some fun. So we have a good show coming up. We're talking about data, democratizing access to economic activity, economic data. But before we go into that topic, let's get to know our guest a little bit. So please kindly introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I'm super happy to be here, and you guys are a great warm-up team. I think my stomach hurts a little bit from laughing as we were getting ready for the show. So a little bit about me. I'm a father of 5. My children are 25 to 5, 2 girls and 3 boys. So that says a lot about me already in my time. Love being a dad. Personally, I'm a sports enthusiast. I went to University of Virginia and love all the UVA sports, especially basketball, being a national championship winner 2 years ago, and where our team is in the College World Series right now. So big UVA sports fan. I'm a sometimes golfer. I'm a pretty good golfer, but don't get to play enough. But I do enjoy that. And the last thing about me personally is, during the pandemic, I was so sort of miserable not being able to exercise and put on, some extra little bit. And I'm happy to say this is the first year I've ever crushed my New Year's resolution, and I am in the best shape I've ever been in. I've worked out every day this whole year, except for the week we went to the beach at spring break and a few days snow skiing. And everything else, I'm on it. So I feel great, and maybe that's a little obnoxious to tell everybody, but I'm excited that way.
Awesome. We're not worthy, definitely. I've got to get my stuff in order about the pandemic LBs for sure. All right, so let's get to know your company a little bit. Moonview. Tell us a little bit. I'm curious about the name, but also tell us about what does the company do.
So I didn't tell much about my background first. I am a 4-time day one founder. So I've been around technology since right out of college. I started my first business 18 months out of the university, and they're all generally startups. My father said, I'm not happy if I'm not, in the middle of a briar patch, and that's sort of in my blood. So this particular startup, I'm listed as a co-founder. I'm grateful to the sort of original founder, Thaddeus Baston, a young man who I met a few years ago. I was actually on a trip out to the Bay Area, went to a fabulous marketplace conference because I'm obsessed with marketplaces, and lo and behold, I come home to a friend's house, and we gathered for a UVA basketball game, watching us in the Sweet 16 on the way to the national championship. And I had been looking at that conference for a marketplace business that that I could join or get involved with. And lo and behold, I didn't find one there. But that night at dinner, I met Thaddeus, and he's been in the stock market, finance industry for his whole life. His grandfather was a finance guy. His father's a finance guy, and he had an obsession with how do we collect data about public companies to sort of, I don't want to say keep them honest, but to bring a level of transparency to what's going on. And so that idea was big idea number 1. And big idea number 2 is I brought in the concept of a platform to put those two things together. So there's a big words there, economic surveillance, observable revenue. Well, what does that really mean? What it means is it sort of goes back to a long time history of big firms, Wall Street firms and others buying satellite data to learn about the economy, to learn about what's going on. Sometimes that's big picture stuff like crops and, are crops doing well? Are they drying up? Sometimes that's about the level of oil in an oil tank, because as you might not know, but a lot of oil tanks rise and fall with the level of oil that's in them. Sometimes it's how many cars are in a parking lot. So if you watch a retail store and see more cars on a trend, then hey, that company is doing better. So what happened is we took a very specific idea, which is, very exciting to people, and we've made a business out of it. So you want to hear about the specific idea?
Yeah, let's go. Well, we'll go into it in just a second. That sounds like an awesome story. What, just if you could tell us a little bit about what gave this the name? Where did Moonview come from? Where did that come from? Is that borrowed from this idea of satellite watching from the moon? What did that come from?
it is, it's interesting. Like an artist with a song or a painting, you sort of want to leave the real interpretation up to the viewer. But yeah, Moonview was concocted by Thaddeus, and the concept of viewing things and seeing all of the economy from the moon. That was the concept. Although it is a little bit weird because we're not into the satellite surveillance. We're into terrestrial surveillance. We put cameras on the Earth and videotape things as opposed to taking big pictures from the satellite. So it's a little bit oxymoronic from that standpoint. But also, from the investing world, we're moving into something called democratized access. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the concept of stocks going to the moon is also another sort of triple entendre, maybe to the name.
I love it.
Or unfortunately having to come down to Earth.
Shoot for the moon.
Well, shoot for the moon. Walk on the Earth. Yeah.
Let's go right into it. Carlos, please introduce the topic and the question that we're going to be answering today. Let's go right into it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Tulio, Kim, and of course, our guest. So, Tulio, today, the topic that our guest chose for today's show is democratizing access to economic activity data to the world. We're going to be answering the question, how data creation through fixed location of interest sensors and data generated by the business processes of public corporations is reshaping market intelligence and alternative data. Sounds like a pretty handful of very interesting concepts that we're going to be discussing today. So, first question that I have for our guest, Sanders, why did you choose this particular topic, and why did you feel it was relevant for today's day and age? Let's start with that. Thank you.
Yeah. So the perfect thing about it is when we talk about data collection and this observable revenue, the way we look at it, it's traditionally been sort of the land of the wealthy. Big corporations, big investment houses that have lots of money can buy data from data companies that also have lots of money. If you have enough money to put up a satellite, that's a lot of dough. So it's been sort of a rare group that gets access to this sort of alternative data. And so our goal is to lower the cost, change the method of collecting data, lower the cost of collecting the data, and thereby being able to provide it to many, many more people, even individual investors, not just sort of the well-heeled, expensive sort of corporations. So,
I mean, that's so interesting. I don't know how many people knew that, like, the satellite imaging of a retail store were providing insights to investors about whether a retailer was doing well or not. I don't know whether a lot of people even know
Absolutely.
that kind of monitoring was happening. I don't
Yeah,
even know
yeah.
if the retailers knew that was happening, right? Because they could have just had free drive-in movies and get a lot of cars in there, right? But the point is,
Or here in Hermosillo, we use Walmart's parking lot when we go watch the baseball game in the stadium.
right?
So,
Right.
so
But the point is that information should be available to everyone, not just a select few, right? If you have it. So is that the
Exactly.
intent?
sure.
Like
Okay,
making public corporations public, right?
to the
Yeah.
public.
So
So how is the technology? You guys are using terrestrial cameras. How are you mimicking that or doing something completely different with something? Where are the cameras going? How's that working? How does that actually come
okay,
to play?
I'll tell you a story. First of all, there's some locations of aggregate interest, which means like over time, how are things changing? And so those satellite photos of parking lots are really about how does it change from day to day. And so if you're there, if there's a special event and you're parking at Walmart to go to a park or something, that will just sort of wash itself out. That's not an actual measurement that matters. But then there's locations of specific interest when you're counting individual things and you want to measure that and show whether a corporation has been making money or not. So I'll give you a couple of examples that we can go around. One is the concept of our first big project we're releasing to the world. We're talking about it starting today, frankly. You heard it here first. And that is we're providing access to the counts of cars at the Tesla factory in Fremont, California. So what that's all about is we went out and rented space on buildings nearby the Tesla factory. We installed cameras on the roofs and other places and other sensors like Bluetooth sensors and Wi-Fi sensors and whatnot. And we point them at the factory and we observe publicly observable production of cars. So as the cars come out, I don't remember the exact average price, but they're in the $60,000 range on average, I think. And so each of those $60,000 units, as they come out, we want to count every one. We count every one. We don't miss any. We know what model type is it. Is it a 3, an S, an X, or a Y? We know the minute that it arrived in the outbound lot and when it gets shipped off. So that's a very specific interest, and we count every single thing. Another very so that's sort of production measurement. The retail example is around footfalls. So that's a term for, do I have a person fall their foot into my store? So another exciting measurement there would be movie theaters. Movie theaters, when you count somebody going in or out, that is a very close approximation of revenue, because you can see, know the ticket prices, you can know what they average spend on concessions inside. So those two are different, and that they're both counting. But the movie theater example is we would need aggregate interest. We would need to get, if AMC has 1,000 theaters, we need to get some number of those, a large enough sample size so that we could sort of measure. So at the Tesla factory, we're measuring exactly what economic activity is happening. And at the movie theaters, we would be measuring what's happening at a sample size of those movies. So how that really isn't possible. Those things really aren't possible from satellites. And so it's only through the local cameras watching things and counting them that you can come up with those numbers.
Sanders, I have a question. And picture that, let me go back a little bit. And for those who are watching who might be new to the space in which you are, would you mind elaborating on two concepts or two things? The first one is, what is an interest sensor? And the other one is Uh-huh. And what is alternative data? Because in my world, in
Perfect.
my limited vision of the world, it's just data. Even big
Yeah.
data, it's as far as I've gone. But what is alternative data, please?
Yeah, alternative data is broadly any kind of data that investors use to approximate information about a public company that wasn't published by the company. So
What's
some
not
of
on
the
the
most,
10K report?
yeah, exactly. So some of the most famous, most used alternative data is credit card data. So companies will collect, when you use a finance app and you don't pay for it, then you're in you're the product, right? If you can't see a business model, then you are the product. So they're collecting hundreds of millions of credit card statements and then selling it to data scientists who can crunch those and understand, which companies are getting more credit card usage and therefore approximating their revenue. So it's a way of sort of backing into how companies are doing that in an early way. The whole goal is to find out early before everybody else does. It's trying to get a competitive advantage. And so the competitive advantage historically for decades has been big firms that have large budgets, giant computers, data scientists, all crunching the stuff and coming up with what they call alpha, which is, the value of their insights, essentially. So what we're doing is we're saying, let's calculate, perhaps simpler numbers, which are signals, about counting things that are happening, things that we can observe. So observing, my last company, I think I spent over $1 million with our lawyer over a period of time. I only went to his office once. So legal lawyer revenue isn't measurable in our way, right? We're not going to put a camera on the door of the law firm and know how much money they make. But there are so many examples of things that we can watch and learn in advance what's happening. And it's all about transparency, and understanding, what can I know? Information is power, information advantage, and if you're an investor and there's an opportunity to know something in advance, you would like that, right?
Yeah.
And so there's been this whole movement, we hear about Wall Street bets and the GameStop situation and the rise of the individual investor during the pandemic, especially things like apps like Robinhood that have made it easier to become an investor. Well, what they haven't had is access to this alternative data, a way to find out, how can I get an advantage in the market? How do I get an information advantage? So we're really excited about building this platform that is going to change two things. One is we're changing the supply. So instead of having a bunch of satellite, a few satellite vendors selling to people that can afford, big budgets, we're going to have what we call a location entrepreneur, a data farmer. But like in my AMC movie theater examples, we're setting up some of our own cameras at AMC movie theaters, and we're going to allow individuals to plug in their own cameras and plug into our platform and help create this data together. So the kind of democratization is both on the supply side with who can help us, collect data, and on the demand side of who can we sell it to, not just the big Wall Street firms, but also individual investors. So, it's a pretty big idea, and we have big ambitions and where we think this can go, and we're pretty excited.
I have so many questions. My first one goes back to something that you said earlier on today's show, and that's transparency. So in addition to finding trends, which I think you've already laid out, is this used as a fact-checking type of method as well? Like, hey, they've reported this revenue or they've reported this upswing, but it doesn't appear to be the case. Like, are we using this to hold companies accountable?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the interesting thing is a big company producing cars, they really can't hide what's going on. I know that, Tesla burns through Christmas. They burn through New Year's Eve, and they're pushing cars out all the way up till January 1st. But on the 1st and the 2nd and the 3rd, not so much. You know, they're taking their time because they're finishing out a quarter. You know, on April 1st of this year, one car came out of the factory, just one. You know, so there's interesting. You know, when they had a chip shortage, we knew that for several days in the first quarter they didn't make any cars, and you know the company did text about it. I'm not sure what announcements were made, but they talked about it. Well, we saw it right away, and so for our data buyers, it's really valuable to understand what's going on, and so that companies, you know. They're public companies. They're producing stuff. You know, the public investors ought to be able to see. I will say that this is a business for us, and that we do want to make money. So we're spending a lot of our resources to create the data, to create the platform to pull this together. You know, we do hope that individuals will buy, and if they do buy, then we have a great business. You know, we'll see.
Yeah, I still have so many questions. I think a couple things, fact checking, applications beyond business. I know business side, I'm curious as to how you go about identifying the companies like Tesla, AMC, who you mentioned. I'm also really curious about the legality behind this, like if you need to get permits or things like that. And then my third question, if we have time, is other applications, going back to fact checking and you know, public visible data like campaign trails. Is this something that politicians are going to glom onto in the future? Or these are all my questions.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, so excited about this.
So exciting. So exciting. Absolutely. You know, we had lots of feelings about the last election and things that we could do in terms of bringing transparency and, you know, cameras in real life. You know, the situation, if a 17-year-old girl hadn't been filming George Floyd, you know, the world wouldn't know about what happened there. So we do believe in transparency and the public view. There's nothing about us that wants to be creepy. We have no privacy concerns. For example, on the AMC theater camera, we block out when we capture it, before it even goes to our servers, we have the individual blanking, I forget what we call it, erasing the faces, so you can't see it. Yeah, face blurring. It's a whole body blurring, frankly, right now, the one that we're using right now. But the goal is never to have PII, no personal identifiable information. We would not allow something on our platform that is purely voyeuristic or privacy, you know, breaking. We are working on a policy about things for Homeland Security. You know, we expect people to put up cameras to watch ships coming in and out of ports, watching things be loaded, and so there's going to be something around. You know, we don't want people to use our cameras to plan some terrorist attack or something. I don't know how we're going to figure that out, but we intend to sort of know your customer in that regard. The other transparency at a Father's Day cookout a couple of days ago, a gentleman from, you know, Army intelligence was telling me that, you know, they do things in the Army like tracking how many dump trucks of dirt come out of a tunnel project, because in our countries overseas, when they say they're building a 1-mile tunnel, they calculate how much dirt should be coming out of that ground, and they want to know, is this some funny business or whatever? So there's all kinds of accountability and transparency. You know, that there's so many things, you have no idea how many things that people would like to have transparency about, whether it's a stock investor, you know, or lots of people. So we expect that investors are our early first market for our platform, but over time we can see the buyers of the data will be enormous. The opportunities to put them out are enormous. We don't intend to sort of boil the ocean in terms of putting a camera everywhere. I think of it more like a fishing hole, right? Is that there's a big lake but then there's a spot where the fish are. And so to circle back to your first question, how do we know? That's what we're talking about, opening up, democratizing our whole platform, which is to allow entrepreneurs, people, we don't want to have all the ideas about what should be, what will be interesting and what will make money. We're going to allow people to go out and put up their own cameras and say, I believe this is a good spot. We'll give them help on how to do it right, how to make it easy for AI to help, what kind of technology works well. We'll guide them, but ultimately, we hope that people, their own creativity will find their way onto our platform.
Very interesting. Look, right now, if you're an investor, the only thing you can go by is the quarterly projection, and then you see the results at the end of the quarter.
Yep.
And anything that happens, any knowledge you gain between that time frame is considered insider trading. So you can't go and call and say, hey, what's happening? Are you actually keeping up with the projections you've made? You can't really have those conversations because that would tip off an investor to potentially sell or buy more, which, people end up in jail for that. So, but readily available public information, like how many cars are coming out of a plant.
Yeah.
Totally okay. So that gives an opportunity for an investor to gain insights on, okay, they predicted this. Is this on track? Instead of having to wait for the end of the quarter to get that. So what you're saying from a business model perspective, an investment house could potentially leverage this for specific institutional investment that they have an interest in, or individual investors could leverage this for specific interest that they have an interest in, or if you're doing a cleanup project in construction. I remember when 9/11 happened, I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we were hired to do the audit of the cleanup, because there was risk of billions of dollars of fraud, of trucks coming in thinking that they loaded stuff. So there's all these applications. But what you're saying is, instead of you guys creating the models, you're just going to create the platform people can plug in, give them the tools, and then they can go and create their own tracking mechanism. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that
that's perfect? I do, Kim. I forgot to answer your other question about legality. So we do, for example, the big key thing is, as Tulio said, we can't go pay money to somebody inside the factory at Tesla and ask them to tell us the how many cars came out, right? So what we do is we get a lease. We have a legal rental agreement on the roof where we put, or wherever we put the cameras. We put them on a place that we have the right to do that, and the right is just by whoever owns the real estate can give us the right to put a camera there. And so once we've done that, it's not insider information anymore, because I'm just observing our cameras are just observing it. And so that's what makes it legal and not sort of insider information. So we will on June 30th, we're going to have a data event, and we're going to tell the world how many cars Tesla produced every week for the last 13 weeks. And 2 days later, they're going to have a press release, or 1 or 2 days later, if they hold to their traditional history. 2 days later, they'll announce how many they had. And so, voila, they do it in aggregate. Yeah, we're confident. Our numbers are very, very good. But
and I love
we
the
give
idea
specifics.
of democratizing. Like two minds are better than one. 1 million minds are better than 100 or thousands or whatever. And just hey, I want to get onto this, and I have an idea. This is what's interesting to me, and social networking, it's great.
All right,
we intend to create a community.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. We're up on time, but we can go and talk for hours on this. Let's just shift with the very little time we have left, a couple of minutes. The culture of the business. What kind of people do you want to participate in this?
I've always said in all my businesses, don't come work for me, because one day I'll disappoint you. Even in some cases, don't work for your own ambitions. If you work for the customer, then all of those things sort of sort out your motivations, your energy. And so I feel like people that want to come and be part of our mission, that believe in transparency and corporate data, that believe in democratized access, that believe in collective good and all coming together and providing a way to do that. I mean, I think those are special people that I want to be around and have in the business. Yeah.
Nice.
So if you're out there, we're hiring.
Awesome. Well, Sanders, it's been a pleasure to have you as a guest. We'll have to stay in touch and keep up with your progress and see what applications and use cases come out of this. We'll have to have you back maybe in 6 months or a year or so, because we love to learn to see how this progressing along. Thanks for being with us. Stay with us. Yes, I bet. It sounds like it. Stay with us as we go off the air. But before we do, Carlos, what do we got coming up for the rest of the week?
Oh, of course. We have 2 shows, Tulio. Tomorrow, we're having a conversation with Jan Bonin, the CEO and co-founder of Red Rex. The topic is going to be tech for good and impact of AI on all humans. And then on Thursday, we're going to be speaking with the principals of Echo.ai, Christina Imri and Adam Hochek, the CEO and CTO respectively. And the topic will be, why are the current employee assessment tools inaccurate? So those are the 2 shows that we have for this week right here on Dojo Live at 12 p.m. Pacific. So join us. Don't miss it. Stay tuned and be safe, everyone.
Thanks, guys.